Strauss & Company will be selling this absolutely magnificent Chinese dinner service from the late 18th century on our 11th of April auction here in Cape Town. And we have the pleasure of showing you this service has been laid out on this magnificent table with various silver accoutrements which would have been used to complement such a service. It comes from the Canton area and is painted in the famille-rose palette. Each plate has a very fine vignette depicting everyday Chinese life with the most wonderful decorated borders of peonies, butterflies and gorgeous insects.
What's really interesting though, I find, is we've got this amazing service and the silver, and we've got wine on the table, but we haven't really talked about how all of this came to being, have we?
Absolutely not.
So Vanessa, do you want to talk us quickly through how these Chinese export services actually came into being?
Yes, Sophie-Louise, they were ordered by extremely wealthy families. They were commissions which was then sent out to China and they were executed there. They were produced in the European taste. For instance, if one looks at this particular platter, it's essentially European. It has a well for draining off juices from the joint and a straining dish. The actual objects are in the European taste with European type finials, and at the time there was a very heavy tax on imports into Europe and the United Kingdom. So these fantastic dinner services were a display of wealth. Not only beautiful, but really had stated the point that you had arrived.
If we go right back in history and we look at the dinner table as it's presented here was not always like this. And if you think today we have these 3-course fine dining meals, we just accept that that is how life goes. But when we go back in history, we have, in medieval times, for example, wooden trenchers being used, pewter, stoneware, all these different vessels. Eating was done with hands initially, and then utensils were introduced later on. And then when the French decided to look at the dinner table as a whole, the rest of the world followed suit. So in the 18th century, we really find the dinner table becoming a defined space, a space that comes almost into its own right. And the wine glass, interestingly enough, enters the picture and actually ends up on the table as we see it here. So the wine glass appears for the first time, one of the first times, in Venice in the 1400s. And the stem of the glass, which is this part over here, is apparently taken from a church chalice, which would make sense in the context. As we see the table evolving, so the wine glass evolves, and as we see the glass manufacturers working with the different strengths of the glasses themselves become more stable. And as things become more fashionable, so the wine glasses change. So for example, the champagne cubes would have been used in the old days. Now we use champagne flutes as an example. So it's interesting how the wine, regardless of whether you're looking at South African wines, as we have on this auction, or you're looking at French wines, the wine actually would be a different tasting experience depending what type of glass you would have used. And then of course, as we carry on through the ages and we look at all this fabulous food coming to the table, and as Vanessa says, it was for the upper classes, so you had a lot of venison and birds and all these fancy confectionery items that came to table. So the dinner services also expanded, I suppose.
Yeah,
would that be right?
They evolved to accommodate these delicious offerings from the kitchen.
Yeah.
So you had soup plates, which were actually warming plates, kept your soup warm, and you had various sizes of plates, didn't we?
Yes.
We've got extraordinary different sizes here on this service for your, what we would say today, your hors d'oeuvre or starter, your dinner plate. We have fruit plates. Just absolutely every shape and size is there to accommodate food.
And what I find so interesting, I mean, this service is 100+ items.
Indeed.
But in those days, kings would gift services to other nobility, and they would be up to 2,000 pieces, which is exceptionally, I mean, it's a massive number if you think today.
It is extraordinary, and if you think of those wonderful feasts and how many people sat down, and you would have had up to 25 courses for one particular dinner.
No, it's extraordinary. So really the evolution of the table, the dining, the food, the wine, and of course dressing up was a huge part of that. Don't forget the ladies got all dressed up and bejeweled, the gentlemen as well. You'd have a welcome drink, you'd have a toast, your meal would be accompanied by various wines. So quite an interesting precursor to what we experience today at a dining table.